congratulations on the launch. How's it been? How's it felt?
It's been good. Things have slowed down. It was a little crazy. Like 4 days after the launch is when a lot of bug reports and stuff started coming in. And then by that time I had returned to work. So I was working like full days and then coming home and working on the game.
So it's been a little nonstop.
Yeah. It's only been like this past week where I'll maybe do, I haven't been doing updates every single day, maybe like every other day, because we've got a lot of the soft locks out and really bad bugs that people were experiencing. So I've been able to relax a little bit.
That's good. I think the game seems to be in a much better state.
For sure.
So you've had, well, it's been out for a couple of weeks now. How has the response been? Are you surprised or?
It's been really good. We have, I think, like 73 reviews on Steam, and there's not one bad review.
Oh, wow.
So that's been really cool. People are excited about it. The Discord's a lot more active than it's ever been.
Were you worried going up to the launch? Did you think people might not like it, or were you decently confident in what you made?
I was pretty confident going in because the small crowd that we did have playing and testing the game really enjoyed it. And I was working off of their feedback and just really trying to make it enjoyable for them, you know. So I think I was pretty confident going into the launch, but I was just worried about, you know, enough people hearing about it.
Has there been any feedback that you've received that you thought, oh, maybe I could have done that differently, or maybe this is something I could change in the future, or anything like that?
I think one thing that I didn't anticipate was people had played the demo back last June for, I think it was Next Fest. And since then, there have been some big changes, and the save data that people were playing with the demo or had from the demo was not compatible at all with the launch build. So that kind of sucked. I was kind of scrambling and having to put warnings inside the game and on the Steam community page about like, hey, you know, don't pick up where you left off. You'll have to start over. And looking back, I think I probably should have done something differently, like kept the demo save data separate from like the launch save data.
How much has changed in the last like year of the game's development?
A lot. And because the last year is probably when I've had the most feedback and most testing done. I noticed at the launch when I was doing like a final update before the launch, and I was looking back on the changelog that I've been keeping, and the changelog started almost exactly a year before the launch. So if you look like in the Steam files, you could go to the changelog file, and you could kind of go all the way back a year and see all the changes that we've made.
What would you say the most notable example is, if you've got anything off the top of your head?
I think how there's like these little patches of dirt in the ground that are how those are released and how like players unlock them. That's what really changed, and what that was pretty dramatic because at first they were all available at the start, and I had to change it so that each patch of soil was released one at a time, and it just made a lot more sense doing it that way for a lot of reasons.
Just help the pacing.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest change as far as like gameplay. As far as just like the look of the game, I think in the last year is when I've added like character portraits to the text and made the text a lot better, like the dialogue.
Yeah, I think they add a lot. So like, it's weird to hear that that's something that's sort of kind of last minute.
Yeah, or like the characters having emotes while their text is going off, and like having the systems in place to do that. That's all like I think in probably the last 1 or 2 years we've put that in.
That's crazy because like I've scrolled back through the Twitter for a little bit, just see sort of how the game has changed over time, and then a lot of it sort of just looks how it does now. But then it's the little things like that you just don't really, that I haven't picked up on fully. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear. I was going to ask about the original Kickstarter, because the game was a lot different back then.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know what the inspirations were behind the original concept rather than the game that was finally released.
The original concept was I had made a little Flash game by the same title, and you were just somebody in a club full of monsters, and you could either choose to you're looking for your assassin pretty much, and you could either choose to question or kill the monsters in the club, and you could only kill 3 monsters before you got kicked out of the club. So you had to kind of ask questions and get clues about what your assassin looked like. That was the original inspiration, and the game that was seen in the Kickstarter was going to be largely that, but just like on a kind of like you'd have a hub island to run around and then different locations to go and play that little mini game.
So the game sort of evolved into, well, what it did because of mostly the Love Delic influence, or was it something that you kind of always wanted to change?
I think it was largely based on being introduced to Love Delic. Like after playing Tulip, I'm like, man, these are the games I've always wanted to make, and maybe didn't really know it.
Because like even in terms of, I guess, gameplay, obviously, but the theming, it feels like the tone went from a bit more dark and gritty, maybe not quite serious, but to a lot more friendly, I guess. There's you don't do a lot of bad stuff in 24 Killers.
Yeah, maybe just buying cigarettes for people or whatever,
Did you ever consider changing the name after that point, just because of how much the game changed?
I did. At one point I really wanted to change the name, but so many people they knew it by that name, and so I just decided to stick with it.
I like the name. I obviously doesn't tell you much about the game, but
No.
I think it sounds good.
All right. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not like I work at a school district, and like teachers or other staff will ask me about the game, and they're like, oh, what's the title of it? And I tell them, and they just look like horrified when I tell them the title of the game. And then I have to say, no, yeah, like it's not what you think.
Well, speaking of names, so where did Shabby come from, if you don't mind me asking?
It came from there's that song in Tulip called Happy Shabby Life.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I got that from, and I'm calling my studio that now, Happy Shabby Games.
Oh, I assume this is the case, but the name Moon in 24 Killers, is that related to the game Moon, or is that just sort of a coincidence? Or
that was a big coincidence.
All right.
Like if you look way back on the original Kickstarter, there was the whole, we kind of framed it around that half moon symbol. And the player would get you started the game and you'd get a letter about inheriting some kind of house or something on the island, and it was supposed to be like a big mystery, and the only kind of clue you had to who sent you that letter was that half moon shape. So Moon, the alien Moon in 24K has always been named Moon, and it is just a big coincidence that she's named that.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the backstory. Speaking of characters, Home, I think, is very interesting as sort of a protagonist for one of these games. Do you have any particular inspirations for him, or why you wanted him to be a bit more abrasive, or is it them? I think
I wanted Home to, I don't know, I did want kind of a transformation from kind of being, I think I related it to how I was feeling at my last job and kind of being burnout, and I kind of related the curse that Home has to being burnout and being kind of isolated. And then I wanted to kind of transition from that jaded burnout kind of feeling to maybe Home starting to get along with all of the people on the island and being part of the community.
And would you say that's, not to get too personal, but reflected a bit in how you've grown over the long development period? I
think so. Yeah, I think it's pretty reflective of just kind of being jaded and about my situation and stuff, and then just seeing things improve and feeling like more part of the community that I live in.
That's really good to hear. But yeah, that's one of my favorite aspects, because I think with loads of these games, it's just sort of characters that go along with. Well, most of them are silent in Love Delic's games, so I think it's a really nice change of pace.
Right on.
The actual island is a sort of military base that's been run down. Where did you get that idea from?
There's a Paul Simon song, and it starts off out in the Indian Ocean somewhere. and it talks about like an army post on this abandoned island. That's kind of where I got that idea from.
And did you think it would be like a good contrast to sort of the weirdness of all the characters?
Yeah, it gave me a lot of room because like I could have soldiers, different creatures on the island that were mutated and all kind and that kind of thing. And I just thought it would. Hearing that song, I thought, man, what an interesting setting that would be, like an abandoned military base on this little desert island.
Yeah, I love all the distinct locales that you can visit. Is there any? Do you have a particular favorite place on the island?
I like the causeway where the mole is. It's kind of like an intersection between everything. That was kind of inspired by a lot of the alleyways and stuff we have here in my town that you could walk through between all the houses and neighborhoods. And I really like the forest too. I like all like here in our park, you have like this green fencing that runs along some of like where like our watershed is. And I kind of like the green metal fencing contrasting with like the forest, and then maybe some old stone work, or like there's that big kind of concrete structure with a valve on top of it in the forest. And I like seeing those kind of structures, like all mossy and old, contrasting with the nature.
Yeah, and I think the forest is like interesting because it's one of the only areas you can't really go to for quite a while. So it's really built up in your mind, and I think it's a lot different than the rest of the island, which is really cool to see when you get there.
Mm.
I think that's kind of getting to the end of my questions, but I was curious. It's kind of unrelated from 24 Killers, but what kind of fish do you have?
I have some neon tetras. They're like the little blue and red ones.
Yeah.
We have some guppies right now that we're trying to breed, just like fancy guppies. We've got it's a golden shiner from the lake here. We caught it when it was just a little fry and then brought it home, and it's huge now. It's probably the biggest fish in the aquarium. Then we've got some corridoras, and I've got a bunch of shrimp too, like Japanese shrimp.
Oh wow! I think that was one of reading the developer confessions was one of the highlights, I think.
Yeah, we put that in because people were they kept throwing the fishbowl, thinking that it would break and they'd be able to get the items inside.
Oh, I know. When I think I tried a load of things before I gave up on that avenue.
Yeah, so we put that in, and then some people were upset, and it was kind of like an even bigger red herring. So, but it's funny though.
Did you, like in testing, did you find a lot of places where you weren't expecting players to try something, and then you kind of use that as a jumping off point to make a good joke? Or
yeah, one of my friends suggested that, and he was saying like, dude, people are going to try so much stuff, so like look for those things that they're going to try, and maybe instead of it just being a dead end, maybe put a joke in there or something. Like where home, if you interact with the photo scanner enough times, home rolls their sleeve back and then is about to dip their hand in the photo scanner, and Moon goes like, "Hey, cut it out."
Oh yeah.
So stuff like that is I like it was fun looking out for that kind of thing and kind of trying to anticipate what players would do.
Have you, after release, have you been surprised by anything you've seen people trying? Or
oh yeah, it's just amazing what people try, and some things are cool, and like they'll find some kind of exploit, and kind of my attitude toward those things are if it doesn't totally break the game or soft lock people, and you can maybe if you're a speedrunner and you could find a use for it, like I'll leave it in if it's not too game breaking or something.
Because I think I read that you're a melee player, so like I take it you're a big fan of like exploits in games that sort of, as long as they don't ruin the experience for casual players, sort of make it better for the veterans in that respect.
Yeah, and I hope somebody finds some way to wave dash in 24K. I would like that.
Oh, I think that's have you played Chibi Robo?
Yeah, I have.
One of my favorite things to do in that game is where if you run and then turn around, you can sort of slide forever. And it's like, yeah, the fun movement stuff in games where, I don't know, they seem restrictive on the surface, but then there's a lot of depth to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think there's anything too much more I want to ask. I've got a lot of information that I've loved to hear about. So
Right on.
all right, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No worries, and I'm looking forward to whatever you do in the future.
Thank you, Ben.